It's exactly 40 years since Buggles released their song, Video Killed the Radio Star. And it was the whoop indeed. I'm feeling quite old now. It was the first song ever played, or first video ever played on MTV in America back in 1981. And I'm here today to talk to you about podcasting. But I'm going to start with radio because, as a lot of you know in this room, that's my passion. Radio's really stood the test of time and has had lots of challenges over the last couple of decades. First of all, from television. Ooh, pictures. Then music television. And now in this digital age, there's gaming and there's social media, a lot that we talked about today. I think it's stood the test of time really, really well. And one of the reasons why it's done that, it's evolved and innovative, but there's also some amazing teams across the planet that make some great sounds for your ears. And I just think it's just a fantastic medium, as you're about to find out. But now, the age of the podcast is here. Put your hand up. We've got to do this, haven't you? Put your hand up if you've heard of a podcast. I know they've been mentioned a couple of times. Wow. I thought it was that big. We'll look at some numbers, so pop your hands down for a couple of seconds. So before I come to speak to you today, I did my homework. And that's something I'm never usually good at. Any ideas how many TEDx talks are based around podcasting? Shout out a number if you want.
17.
You think so, wouldn't you? Any better, worse than that? 2,000, you think so? 2. Yeah, quite a surprise. Now, both of those are really interesting and they're really relevant. And they talk about the commercial viability of podcasting, but not one of them tells you how to do it. So for the next 10 minutes, I'd like you to lend me your ears. Got to do it dramatically. And in return, I'll hopefully release Okay, so I've always liked this quote. Now, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, so apologies, but I think it's Jodi Picoult. I've always been aware of it, but I didn't realise it was in 2 sections. So apparently, everybody has a book inside of them, but it doesn't do any good until you pry it out. Now, I went to the local school, Lisbury High School, no booing. And I actually studied, really badly, A-level English literature. And it put me off writing forever. I don't want to write a thing. It's not my thing anymore. But I celebrated 25 years as a DJ here in TEDxCasnewydd a couple of years ago. Thank you. Putting up with what I've put with the last 25 years, I think I deserve a round of applause, but I wasn't expecting one, so thank you very much. And I wanted to commemorate it. I thought, what can I do? And for some reason, that came back at me. And I wrote a series of blogs, 25 of them, to celebrate every year of my DJing in Newport, and talked about the local area. And you know what? I almost slightly enjoyed it. I'm thinking, can I apply this to podcasting? Could we do that? So let's do the traditional TEDx thing, okay? So have a little think for me, for just a couple of seconds, the answer to this question. What are you really passionate about? You've seen lots of speakers today talking about their thing. Radio is my thing. With that passion, is it enough to get you out of bed in the morning? Do you do it for a living? Or do you just do it for fun? Have you got a sports team that you're really, really into? Also, are your mates into the same thing? And if so, have you got the same views? Or are they all completely different? Have you ever thought about getting your mobile phone, because they're brilliant things, aren't they? Pop it on the table and record those conversations and make some audio diaries. Or maybe even a podcast. And that's how you could get into podcast. Okay, in 2008, I became very responsible, good time to do that, for a not-for-profit, internet-based community radio station called Newport City Radio. Woo! Thank you. Hey, there's a bit of lip for it there. And it's a community radio project, completely staffed by volunteers as well. This year, we have had our Annus Horribilis, which apparently is Latin for horrible year. Now, you might remember Her Majesty the Queen had one of these in 1992. So, like the Queen, sadly, some of my volunteers have had some of their relationships break up, and it's never good. But unlike the Queen, nobody has had a tell-all book written about them and serialised and scandalised in all the newspapers. Don't think the Argus does that, so that's pretty cool. And no one's been papped having their toes sucked in public. Ooh. But there's still 2 months left yet, so anything could happen. What this horrible year has allowed me to do is come up radio with fresh eyes. And I remember reading a book called The Nation's Favourite, which was all about Radio 1. And the then controller, Johnny Beelin, had just been deposed off the throne and started to listen to radio for fun again. And he really enjoyed it as opposed to work. And that's what this year's been like for me as well. It's been quite good. So, I've got a confession. No, not about the suckability of my toes. Although they're quite cute. Can't see them from there. Like all the rest of the speakers here today, they're really knowledgeable in their fields. Some of them are at the absolute top of their game. I'm standing here in front of you today, absolutely clueless. Now, before you ask for your money back, let me go into a bit more detail about that one. I absolutely love the medium of radio. I love the way it's immediate. You listen to it now in the moment. It's quick to turn around. It's relatively cheap and easy to do as well. I love the way that it connects with the audience. And when it's done right, it can bring out a range of emotions in the listener, and that's just amazing. It can be very, very personal. Now, at this point, the lights are supposed to go dead, and I'm supposed to be plunged into dark. Oh, wow, thank you, guys. With radio, there's no visual distractions. Close your eyes as well, because that's too light. Close your eyes. No visual distractions. It can focus your mind and help you completely zone out. Put the lights back on if you can for me. That was almost theatrical. I enjoyed that. Thank you, guys. Give the technicians a big round of applause. I wasn't expecting that. I love producing radio. I love the way that you take music, you take people, you take relatable stories, you take silly information, the odd crap joke maybe, and sports news and travel news and news, and you put it into one great big huge gooey lump of entertainment. Absolutely love that about radio. I also like the way that when you're behind the microphone, you're speaking to thousands of people, maybe hundreds, but really, if you're lucky, really you're just speaking to one. Sorry to pick on you. And that's the beauty of radio, and that's probably what the beauty of podcasting is. So I would class Newport City Radio over its various logos over the last couple of years as being very successful. We've helped develop people's skills, tried to hone their talent a little bit, and yes, built their confidence as well, to a point where often they leave me for better things. That's okay, Taz. Dale. Now, here's the nice thing from my point of view. Do you know today, 60% of the people involved with this TEDx talk have been through my doors one way or another, and I'm really proud of that. Note without its drawbacks, though. So I've tried to keep Newport City Radio really focused on its business plans. But we've had some anomalies. One of them being, in 2014, we started writing blogs. Not for radio, but for the website. And it's a completely different skill set. Then in 2017, someone called Kim, there she is, came up to me and said, can we do an award ceremony? A bit like the Brit Awards, or a bit like the Grammys. Why not? So we created the Love Live Music Awards. And as you've learned today, there are so many great musicians playing in Newport and the surrounding areas. And I'd like to think that day was an absolute massive success. So thanks to everybody else involved in that one as well. And now, 2019, it is the turn of the podcast. So that's what we have to do. So I am a bit late to the podcast party. My first recollection of a podcast was just a radio show that I just heard, but you could go and listen to it again. And that didn't make any sense. I've already heard it. And then I became aware that on those style of podcasts, they were creating additional bits that I'd not heard before. Now that makes complete sense. It's a reason to go back. And now there's freebies and competitions and giveaways. So it incentivizes me, the listener, to go back and have a little listen. And not only that, I've started subscribing as well. It's all brand new. So now it's more than just repeatable radio. Here's a little trick with podcasting. I believe they're really good when you've got a short series with an overriding topic, and each episode deals with an individual theme, or maybe a couple of themes. I think now they're their own creations. I would even go as far as to say that they're a different medium to radio. So that's the professional side of it. What about the personal side? There we go. Last year I took up running. I'm not doing much running there. That was Christmas Day, believe it or not, outside this building. There we go, that's a better one. Oh, it's a bit big. That's quite scary. Okay, I knew that I could do anything as long as I got music in my ears. And that's the good thing about audio. I can go on the treadmill and I can have a little listen. I can be in the streets and also listen. And then I stumbled, though not literally, I was okay, don't worry, across a 2-hour mix of dance music from the BBC called Pace Setter. And it's a mix of dance music and it's got motivational messages into it. As a runner, that makes complete sense, though I've not quite run the whole 2 hours of it yet. As a radio geek, I was horrified because I'm listening to this podcast and I'm not listening to a traditional radio station. In this case, probably Radio 1, although I'm too old for it. And at the moment, radio stations need as many listeners as they can get, so it just all feels a bit odd. And then the penny dropped. I was still consuming a BBC product. And if I was logged into my BBC account, and I was, the BBC knew how many times I listened to that and for how long for. The BBC know how much of a rubbish runner I am. So what do we get out of it, or what do radio stations get out of it? Well, it's a better quality of data capture. There are lots of problems with the way that audiences are measured in the UK. We just don't tell you about it. And this is just a really, really great way of doing it. So it completely makes sense. Here in the UK, radio is regulated by Ofcom. Ofcom reckon that 6 million of you listen to a podcast every single week. And this is how up to date I am on it. Last Thursday, the new figures came out, and it's gone up to 8 million. That's just in the case of 3 months. They reckon it's going to double within the next 5 years. That is the growth of podcasting. They take that, and at the start of the year, the BBC rebranded their iPlayer radio app into BBC Sounds. And it's got all of their radio stations on it, and then some additional podcasts as well. Around the same time, the biggest radio group in the UK, commercial radio group in the UK, guess what they did? They created an app called the Global Radio app, and they've got all of their radio stations on it, and podcasts. But not only podcasts from their own radio shows, but podcasts from you guys as well. So I kind of knew that my industry that I love was changing, but what could Newport City Radio do about it? So we created something called #SportHour. That's my jingle, not the one that we've got for it. Because everything's got a hashtag these days, so it just seemed cool. Let me take you back in time. So Newport City Radio have had a fantastic sports show for many years, and it's live commentary of games home and away. Now, those away games were brilliant, because the further that Newport County Football Club went away from this city, the more listeners we got. And that was amazing. But then suddenly, we had bad news. Newport County rudely got promoted. Way. So, at that point, we lost our biggest radio show. Although, I do respect the fact that our volunteers still love doing that show. So we changed it. I started to think about it. What could we do differently? What could we do to get away from that noise that happens at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, not on the pitch, but around it? So you've got the game taking place that people want to go and watch. I understand that. You've got the club doing Twitter feeds and updates. The local newspaper does it as well. And then suddenly you've got that commentary that we didn't have anymore because it's been taken on by the Football League and it's been used as a subscription service. So we decided to come away from that. And what we did, we wanted to send our guys over to watch the match because they love that. And the football club are willing to have them there as well for free, which is amazing. And then they would record the commentary, and they do now, on a Saturday afternoon while the game's happening, and they edit it for later. What happens next is that when the final whistle blows, we go onto our social media pages, Facebook and Twitter, and we ask a very, very simple question. What did you think of the game? We usually blame the ref. That usually works really, really well for us. And then at 1 o'clock on a Sunday, we go into Newport City Radio Towers and we think about and read all the comments that we've had. And we select the nice ones, not the nasty ones. We also have a look at all the rest of the Twitter pages and all the rest of the KNT-related social media pages. And what we do at that point, we collect it all together and come up with 4 or 5 different talking points. We've got the interview from the manager, the post-match, and also the players as well. So we've got some great audio. We try and inject a little bit of humour into it, and then suddenly at 4 o'clock, we've got a live radio show. And that then goes out as a podcast. That podcast is now fit for purpose. The fans hopefully enjoy it, a lot more than we could ever do with the commentary, and it lasts for longer, well until at least the next game anyway. And that's been our story of podcasting. So I want to go back to the quote from Jody Piquet, and I won't bring it up on the screen because it might not work. So I'm going to revise it. How brave. I believe that everybody has a podcast inside of them. All you need to do is pry it out. And like I said before, get your recorder out, sit around with your mates, have a chat, record it. It's a podcast. Go and speak to your local community radio station. If they don't know about the power of podcasting, there's hopefully now 3 TEDx talks on it. No pressure, guys. So what I'm asking you to do today is that if you've got any interest, and there does seem to be a big thing about podcasting at the moment, have a go. Because video hasn't killed the radio star. And I think podcasting might just save it for another generation. And like we always say in radio, thank you very much for listening.